Is Utah the most important team in the Big 12 this upcoming season? We're diving into it on a Locked On Utes Locked On Baylor crossover.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes and Locked On Baylor your first listen and view of the day. I'm JT Wistrcill, excited to be joined by the host of Locked On Baylor on today's show, Cam Stewart. We got a loaded one, talk about some very interesting comments made by a certain Big 12 head coach, also the Protect College Sports Act and how it affects both of our institutions. But first, we got a fun conversation around a take that Mr. Cam Stewart had the last time he teased it at the end of Locked On Utes. So I wanted to have him back on a crossover to talk about it. Cam, you said you believe Utah might be the most important team in the Big 12 this upcoming season. Please explain.
I did, JT, I did. And still a few weeks later, I believe it. I think all of us in the Big 12 can benefit from a good Utah season, a very good Utah season, as a matter of fact. So I'm not just saying this pumping up the Utah Utes. Lord knows I don't do that a lot. But I think this would have a positive trickle-down effect to everyone, to Baylor, to TCU, to Iowa State, to Colorado. And that day is not right now for those schools. That day is right now for Utah. But somewhere down the line, it will help my Baylor Bears and others in the Big 12. And here's why, without any further ado. If Utah puts together another 10-win season, 11-win season this year, they're going to be really tough to ignore. Mm-hmm. If the Big 12 going into the final week of the season last year had 3 teams that were in the running for the college football playoff. People forget that Utah was really right there. They were inside the top 15. They were there, and they had a resume very similar to BYU, who obviously they lost to, but the BYU was knocking on the door of the college football playoff. And the way the ACC went, they really only have one team in contention. And that, let's be honest, like that's who we're competing with right now when it comes to college football playoff, right? Is the ACC. Because when we eventually move to 16 teams in the CFP and we kind of try to muscle out the group of 5 as much as we can, whether that's good, bad, or otherwise, you're going to start looking at these very differently, these resumes. And obviously, if we had a 16-team playoff, even if we still had a couple of group of 5 teams, BYU and Utah are a lot closer than even they were last year when they were really, really close. But, they were Big 12, so the CFP tried to ignore them. So what I'm saying is if you have that same situation 2 years in a row, we have all kinds of ammo. We have all kinds of ammo to throw at you when it does go into 16 teams of like, hey, man, how long are you going to keep us out? There's one ACC team in the top 15, and we have 3 of them. And there's a good chance that can happen again this year. So if Utah ponies up and does that again, for the second year in a row, it's going to be really tough to ignore. You can talk about Texas Tech because they have a lot of money, right? And they can buy a ton of talent. And so the CFP, in a weird way, even though they got shut out, looked embarrassing offensively in that game against Oregon, they can look at Texas Tech and be like, okay, yeah, we can't ignore Tech. Like they won the Big 12. They got all this money. They got all these great players that we said were great players. So we kind of have to stick with that. BYU, though, they can talk their way out of it. They can talk their way around it like they have the last 2 years, especially last year. You have 3 teams in there, though. Like you can't. I'm just saying what the CFP is saying. They're not looking at Utah the same way they're looking at BYU. They're not looking at it as this kind of religious school that I don't understand that used to be an independent for so long. They're not looking at Utah that way. And so if Utah is right there knocking on the door again, it's just very tough to ignore, especially when we move forward to 16 teams. And here's the thing, JT, this is where I'm wrapping it up. If that scenario does indeed happen, and let's say 2 years from now, we're playing in a 16-team college football playoff, and the last 2 years before it, we had 3 Big 12 teams in the top 15, that becomes then an expectation of, well, we're going to have more Big 12 teams in here. And even if that's not Utah 2 years from now, but it's Kansas State or Baylor, that's 10-2, they're like, oh man, The Big 12, they have these kind of teams every year, man. They gotta get in. Like, they keep proving time and time again that they have a second and third place team that is worthy of getting into this expanded 16-team playoff. The ACC continues to show me that they do not. So that's where I think Utah is super important for the rest of us this year. If Utah can go out there with a new head coach, albeit a guy who has obviously been in the system a long time, but with a new head coach, and go head-to-head once again with the BYUs and the Texas Techs of the conference, which I think they can, then the Big 12 will be awfully tough to ignore, because they'll say, man, and that was a team. I know you know this. I know Utah fans know this. They'll look at this and be like, well, that was a team that was winning Pac-12 championships as well. I don't know if you guys know this. They went to back-to-back Rose Bowls. All of a sudden, that resume starts to add up a little bit. And while Utah has not been to the CFP, that all of a sudden changes the reputation of the Big 12 to where I think, in the minds of the CFP people, we can afford to have more than one Big 12 team in the college football playoff. Even as a 12 team, I think, by the way, definitely as a 16 team.
So I love it.
Everyone's reputation.
I love it. And I think you're really right on Utah too, rather than like if you said Houston or Arizona, because I think you did a great job of highlighting something that is just a fact. When we say like, oh, ignore past years and what happened and things of that sort, we're humans. We can't, especially those people on the committee. They bring up, if Arizona and Houston are good, it's going to be, well, how good are they really? And Utah will have a similar question. But at least with Utah, it's, as you mentioned, Pac-12 titles. And those years you mentioned, including the Rose Bowl, right? Who did they go toe-to-toe with? They beat USC and Oregon, and they went toe-to-toe with Ohio State. And before Cam Rising got hurt, that Penn State game was still there to be had. So Utah has shown they can compete with these teams too, right? They were a team, and also they just went in and stomped a Big Ten program last year. I mean, say what you want about Nebraska, but when those big conferences always tell me we can go and win with our 2s and 3s in that schedule, we blow you out by 20.
Say what we want about Nebraska, but Matt Rule's talking about how, oh, you want to go play in the Big 12? You want to that's basically G5. You're going to take a step down, and then you kick the crap out of them. Yeah, say what you want about us, Matt. Trust me, I know, Matt. Say what you want about us. We'll just come in here, go between the white lines, and kick your, So I'm just saying, JT, it helps everybody. And that's the other thing is like, I don't know. You talk about kind of that recent history. Like, I just don't know. Maybe TCU, if they took a step a couple years in a row and were right there knocking on the door of the CFP, that could help everyone else, because people remember obviously the run they had in the 2000s and making it national championship game recently. Baylor,
they also remember that last game, unfortunately, by the way, with TCU. Right. I do think it's crazy. Like, they made that championship, but I think that hurt them getting embarrassed the way they did. I do think hurts their brand right now. I mean, the national championship run helped, but man, the way it ended, just that hurt.
Did. Absolutely. Even though they beat a very good Michigan team that won the national championship the next year, right? It wasn't 2 years later. It was the next year. Yeah. Next year. So, I think Utah, more than just about any of those other teams knocking on the door. Yeah, maybe TCU, maybe Kansas State or Arizona State, maybe, because Kenny Dillingham, they'll be like, oh man, he's really building a program there. But like if Baylor did it this year, for example, it would probably be seen as a fluke because of what they've been the last couple of years. But Utah, it's like, man, we can't ignore these. Like they took basically 1 year off. We can't keep ignoring these guys.
Nope, you can't ignore them if they keep having that success. And man, I would love to see Utah get there. I think you make a lot of good points too. And obviously, an element we've talked about in the past is Utah has this game against Arkansas that the Big 12 just cannot afford a lawsuit. That would be a disaster if you lose that game as well. So that's another thing that adds to just the importance of this game overall too. Speaking of something very important, the Protect College Sports Act is ongoing right now. If it passes, what would that mean for the Big 12? We're going to discuss next on this Locked On Utes, Locked On Baylor crossover. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Odoo. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, Everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. And that's true in sports, just like it is in business. Take the Baylor Bears, for example. They decided to bring Dave Aranda back. Obviously, that was met with a lot of different reactions, but because they did that, they then got on the same page. And what were they able to do? Land a guy in DJ Lagway, who, if we're being honest, he absolutely has a chance to raise their ceiling with the elite skill set, potential, and talent that he does have. That move doesn't happen unless everyone is aligned, because that's what great organizations do. They stay focused and they stay aligned. And great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon to try Odoo right now. Thank you guys again for making Locked On Utes and Locked On Baylor your first listen and view of the day. The Protect College Sports Act is ongoing and has not been signed. Wouldn't be signed till September, which there's rumors that President Trump actually wants to try and sign it on College game day. So just a lot of craziness going on right now with this, Cam. Overall, I think it would be good for the Big 12 to stay together. There's a lot of Utah fans, of course, that always clamor to go off to the Big 10. And when you see the financial resources, I get where they're coming from. But look, at the end of the day, if we could protect these conferences, and if this goes into effect, I don't see anyone leaving the Big 12 because they're trying to cap it as well as 19, 20-team conferences. I don't really think anyone from the Big 12 is on that next tier looking in. I think the ACC has some of those big brands still that would be next in line. But the Big 12, I still think, is better than the ACC overall because, number one, some of those big brands just haven't been good at football. Florida State last year, 2 years, obviously the biggest culprit of that since the undefeated season. So I feel like if this does go into effect, it does keep the Big 12 strong for the foreseeable future. I would be good with this. How do you feel about it?
I mean, I'm there with you. Like, the Big 12's in a good spot here. I don't think, their ceiling is getting much higher out of this. But then again, I don't know what really is raising the ceiling for the Big 12 right now, but the floor is in a really good spot. You got a nice house here. Okay. The floor is in a good spot. And you are very much surviving in this new landscape of college football. I think the Big 12 has hit a good sweet spot there, but I know there will be some fans that are like, how are we going to get better? How are we going to challenge the top two here? I think this really, if you're looking at a conference that is really affected by this, it is the ACC. There's clearly some backdoor stuff going on so that some schools can leave the ACC if they so choose. And we saw this with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. Obviously, you'll know this very well. Like, once those big dogs start going out, everyone else is looking for air. Everyone else is looking for the window. And once it inevitably happens, because they've talked about this for years, if not decades, like Miami, Florida State, and Clemson are on their way out in some way, shape, or form, maybe North Carolina, then there's the Pitts and the Louisvilles and the Syracuses and Georgia Tech, like someone with any kind of semblance of attractiveness to another conference is looking for the ladder and trying. Duke, is trying to get out and find a place to land. So that's where it benefits potentially the Big 12. But really, this revolves around the ACC for me. And I read this really good piece. I don't know if you saw it this week from Stuart Mandel. It was an opinion piece about this whole Protect College Sports Act. And I found myself, JT, agreeing with it 110%, which is just like, I just don't have a lot of confidence in this bill and what it's going to do for college sports. And basically this opinion piece, this column outline, like, they've been trying this for 6 years. This some sort of bill from Congress outside, the NCAA to save college sports. And really the emphasis of it is like, we're not putting the toothpaste back in the tube. Like, I just, you keep looking for an outside entity to save you. And really the only way to do this is the professional sports model. Like, stop negotiating between athletic directors and networks and the NCAA and Congress and start negotiating with the players. Like, that's what you need to do here. And it sucks because, like, that does take away from college sports for me. Call me an old guy. I don't love the way that college sports is now versus what it was 10 years ago, when I was like completely in love with it, 20 years ago when I fell in love with it. But I also understand why players probably don't want to unionize because they love it right now. Like, who wants unions if you're just getting all this money, who wants to cap that? But I don't think any of this gets solved until you just start negotiating with the players and making them in a way employees.
Yeah.
We keep trying to do these other things, and it's commendable. I think that's great in theory. I don't think it works in practice. So does this go through? Maybe and probably, but they're going to find loopholes at every turn to be able to spend more money and to funnel it towards football, obviously. And I don't know that it's necessarily going to save the rest of college sports, which is unfortunate because, I know there are some of our listeners who do really enjoy Olympic sports. And I think for student athletes in general, there's been like a huge increase in women playing college sports the last 10, 12 years. I think it's gone up by like tens of thousands of student athletes. And so clearly, and obviously the sports themselves are really growing. Women's basketball is huge now versus what it was 10 years ago. I just don't think this is going to do it, JT. I don't think there's anything that's, I'll put it this way. I don't think there's anything that's going to stop these schools from bankrupting themselves to being better at football. I really don't.
And it's scary because, like you said, I understand that, most people listening to this, we're football, we're basketball fans, and those are really the ones we probably talk about making employees in this instance if they did that. But it would make me sad to see, like, I know Iowa State already had to do away with the wrestling, right? Like, there's just other programs and things going on, like Marshall Cut Swim, like it's just going to continue to happen. And I just think that sucks that we take away, and I want these guys to get paid. I really do. But when it comes at the cost, like I said, I think there's a difference between them getting paid fairly and a lot of money and them getting paid so much that you have to take away from other people. And I think that's unfortunate. What sucks.
Yeah. And like I heard, this week when Hosea Wheeler was on the stand for his eligibility case, getting $850K from Baylor this year. A defensive tackle playing football. I'm not saying he's not worth that, but that's more than like 4 other sports teams combined. That's probably, it's probably double the size of the entire Baylor baseball team. If not more, so like that's the kind of number difference that we're talking about here.
Yep.
And I get it, right? Football makes the most, but that's where it becomes the domino effect of, these schools are literally going to bankrupt themselves so that they can hopefully be good at football and bring in a ton of revenue through that. And it's just a cycle. And then when you stick with the wrong head coach for a while, then you're just bankrupting yourself. You're not getting better at football. You're just spending a lot of money on it, getting no ROI. And these alums that are just giving to make a better football team and getting no return on that investment, by the way, not really getting it even if they are good, then they're also not going to contribute to your new academic buildings or to your scholarship funds or anything like that. Because they don't really care about that. They want the football team to be better, which is probably the boat that I would be in if I had any kind of money either or too. But that's how it's going to be.
Feels that way. It's crazy times in college athletics. And we'll see. Like you said, there's still definitely a lot of questions if this does pass too. That's a big part of this conversation that is going on.
Hell of a moment on College Game Day, though.
What would be insane. Polarizing too. Oh my gosh, that would be something else.
It's gonna be a good day for the internet. I'll tell you that much. It's gonna be a good Twitter day.
Maybe it'll be at a BYU game. Speaking of the Cougars, Kalani Sitake had some very interesting comments that we gotta dive into because this is just crazy. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you connect employers with candidates who match specific needs life skills, certifications, and locations. So less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Usually the biggest difference isn't someone doing more work. It's having somebody who knows exactly what needs to happen and helps everything run smoother. And that's why you need to find that candidate who can take your business to the next level. And the best way to do that is to get Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing the candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And the listeners of the show will get $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get your job the premium status it deserves in Indeed.com/podcast. So go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Kalshi. Before the season even kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at the season's end? On Kalshi's, America's #1 sports prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. How great is it to have football back? Yes, it was only a preseason game, but man, it was an electric atmosphere, and I cannot wait for more ball. And however you think your team or any team is going to do, you can head over on Kalshi today. Can the Utes make a run to the Big 12 title game? How's Baylor going to do this year? And you can get in on all the action when you head over to Kalshi today. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your positions, trade the draft pick, the game, and more on Kalshi. Download the Kalshi app and use the code LOCKEDON, all caps, no spaces, to get $10 when you trade $10. That's Kalshi, Kalshi. Trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.regulatory.com today. Once again, you can head over and check this all out when you head over to Kalshi and go over to kalshi.com/regulatory to learn more. I think Kalani Sitake is one of the best coaches in the Big 12 Conference. I have no idea what he was talking about earlier this week. Or do I actually? There's a reason we got this answer. Basically, there's been some interesting things happening in Cougar land this week, Cam. Over the weekend, a rumor started to circulate that Brian Santiago was fired. And sure enough, he showed up at a BYU soccer game with the president. So clearly not fired. But there was a lot of noise. It actually led to the BYU athletic department logging on the most popular Cougar message board and putting out there that he's still hired.
Huge day for message boards. Huge day.
And then the very next day, so amidst all this noise, Kalani Sitake, who really never says anything hot topic or of sort of that nature, like always just fires up his guys, keeps everything close to the vest if there is problems inside, makes a crazy comment. He says, "We have been doing the most with the least," he says, which is absolutely insane that he decided to go there. But that's what he said. We've been doing the most with the least, amidst a rant about a couple things just going on in terms of finances. And then BYU actually does end up hiring someone else in their athletic department to help out with things too. So it's a deputy AD. It's just interesting timing with all of it. But I got to be honest, this is the example of Kalani Sitake saying this, of someone who it seems like his feelings have been hurt and he's frustrated and he lashed out. Because, Cam, he is not doing the most with the least.
You don't think so?
I don't think KU Luave is the first team all linebacker from Cal comes over to this conference. It's just insane. Like, I am not saying that they are Texas Tech. I don't think anyone's saying that. But for him to say we're doing the most with the least in the Big 12 conference with the team he has and some of the players they've added over the years, asinine comment.
But ESPN tells me Bear Bachmeier's not any good. Are you sure? I want to play a little game if we could. I don't mean to put you in the spot, JT, but who do you think has the smallest endowment in the Big 12?
Would that be like Cincinnati, UCF, somewhere like that, you think?
You got it, man. I was a little surprised. Okay. It's UCF, the school with I think they and Arizona State have the two biggest enrollments in the Big 12. Yeah, the UCF is in last.
Yeah.
Do you want to know who number one is?
Is it BYU?
Brigham Young University has an endowment of $3.8 billion. Man, $3.8 billion, which is almost twice of what Texas Tech has as an endowment. Now, Tech obviously is Cody Campbell. That's what you need in this, right? But in terms of just how much money they are getting as an endowment from their alums, that is what they're getting every year. And they are the flagship university of an entire faith, right? That is massive. So, like, BYU is a great story overall in college football. I know some of your listeners might not agree. I get that. But coming from an outsider's perspective, right? It is a religious university that, is only a religion based in these flyover states that the coastal elites don't know anything about. And they have done it at a high level. And by the way, obviously Utah has a lot of LDS as well, University of Utah. And they make it work. They make great football. Both these programs have had great football for a long, long time now. And so, they should be a success story. Both these schools can compete in a flyover state, that can compete in the NIL era. And then I got Kalani Sitake being like, yeah, little sisters of the poor, man. Our AD doesn't even care about us. All that money's going to basketball. I'm like, we need to slow our roll here. We really need to slow our roll here. And I like Kalani as well. I think he's a great coach. I think he's a genuine guy. I think that's probably why he's doing this, because he's just angry and slashing out. But like, I'm kind of sick of the sob train on that. Like, bro, you have a lot more money than a lot of us, right? Baylor included, Oklahoma State included, now with no T Boone. They're hurting for some money. All kind, name your school in the Big 12. And for them to be like, we just don't have this. We have this faith. We have our own TV network. We've got all of this, but could you spare us some change, man? We got to spend $4 million on a basketball player who's only going to be here for 1 year. So I didn't need to hear that from Kalani. I'm just like, man, there are a lot of schools in our conference who might have some money right now, but they are still desperate to see what a long-term plan looks like in NIL. I think Baylor falls into that category where we're not as poor as we make it out to be right now. But down the line, how sustainable is it? Obviously, we heard Jamie Pollard at Iowa State be very candid about that the last 2 years of like, we don't know how long this lasts. Like, we got money right now, but we don't know how sustainable this is. And, one bad coaching hire and we're screwed and we're done. BYU is not in that boat. So as a Baylor fan, I just don't love hearing it.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's one of those things. Yes, I understand you don't have Ohio State money. I will say, like, contrary to what Kalani could have done is gone to Penn State. Then he wouldn't have had an issue. You made the decision to stay.
But JT, then guess what happened?
What?
The university called their biggest donors and they drummed up the money. Like at one drop of a hat, BYU got the money. There are plenty of schools in this conference that cannot do that. No. There could be a world where Utah might not be able to do that. That's real. That's a possibility. By the way, their endowment's pretty high as well. I know that's only one source of income, but their endowment is pretty good.
Makes sense.
It's a lot less than BYU's, as are most other schools in this conference. But anyway,
the most with the least. That's like we said. It's just when you, like you said, they drum up enough money to give him a competitive enough offer to stay at BYU over Penn State. And he says the most with the least. I don't think Scott Frost, if he had a Penn State offer, I don't think UCF's drumming up that money.
Right.
Talked about for that example. Not that
not taking a pay cut.
Yeah, not the Penn State wanted to run that back, but it's just like you said, coming from others.
I mean, literally. By the way, sorry,
because
I just used them as an example, but now it's coming full circle. BYU could drum up that money to make him not go to Penn State. Iowa State could not. Get that money for Matt Campbell. Couldn't do it. And even if they could, Matt Campbell probably looks at this critically and says, okay, I can make this much money, but then how much money is actually going to go towards my roster? BYU, you don't have that problem. Kalani can say, I am going to get this money and I'm going to have enough money to compete in this conference and then therefore, ergo, potentially make the college football playoff. So
it's crazy. Like you said, that's another great. There's just so many examples. And that's where, like, Kalani's a great coach. I really think, like, his feelings are just hurt. Like, he's clearly just frustrated the fact that he decided to lash out and say this. Because I even think if we asked him with a cooler head, he'd probably be like, yeah, not the least in the Big 12. Like, I didn't mean it that way. I meant the most in, like, compared to contenders. And I get when you get frustrated.
Even then, Man, yeah, if he's saying we don't have enough as much as Michigan, guess what, Kalani? It's always going to be that way. It's always going to be that way. Like, I mean, Tech is the only one, and still, like, I don't know that Tech could compete with a Big Ten power as we saw last year in the college football playoff. So like, it's always going to be that way. Like, that's where we were like, join the club, man.
I agree with you fully. Like I said, crazy comments, and hey, we'll see how they actually do on the football field. We are just a few weeks away from football season. If you guys want all things Baylor, head over to Locked On Baylor. You can keep it here at all things Locked On Utes for your Utah content too. Cam, appreciate you crossing over with me. Always fun, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's always a grand old time when the two of us get together. Look out, world.
Look out, world, indeed. That's going to do it for our shows today. As I said, if you're in the market for a second listen, just trade each other's shows. Big 12 too. We got a fun squad show coming up later this week. That'll do it for Locked On Utes, Locked On Baylor. We'll be back with you soon, talking to your favorite team each and every day.